The moment your wife asks permission to betray you, the marriage is already standing on the edge of something it may never come back from. Ryan Mitchell was sitting at the kitchen table in their Nashville home when Claire placed her fork down beside a plate of untouched pasta and said, "I need one night with Grant." The words did not come out shaking. They did not come wrapped in tears or panic or shame. She said them carefully, almost gently, like she was asking for a weekend alone at a spa or a few hours to clear her head. Steam still rose from the pasta between them. The overhead light gave the room a soft yellow warmth. Outside, a December rain tapped against the window above the sink, steady and ordinary, while inside the house, 10 years of marriage seemed to stop breathing. Ryan looked at her across the table. Claire had dressed nicely for dinner, though they were not going anywhere. Her hair was pinned back. Her sweater was pale cream. Her hands rested in her lap, as if she had rehearsed keeping them still. "Say that again," Ryan said. His voice sounded calm, even to him. Claire swallowed, then looked him in the eye with the strange courage of someone who had already decided her feelings deserved protection more than his. "Grant Holloway is back in Nashville. He is playing a private event this weekend. We have been talking, and I realized I never got closure with him." Ryan did not move. Grant Holloway. The name had always lived in their marriage like an old photograph turned face down in a drawer. The college musician with the perfect smile. The man Claire once described as the one who made every room feel electric. The man who never chose her when choosing her would have required staying. "Closure," Ryan repeated. Claire leaned forward, encouraged by the fact that he had not raised his voice. "Just one night, Ryan. I know how it sounds, but I need to know what I have been carrying all these years. I need to get it out of my system so I can come back fully. To us." The word "us" landed harder than Grant's name. She was using their marriage as the place she planned to return after stepping outside of it. She was asking Ryan to keep the lights on while she went to test whether another man still made her feel alive. The fork beside his plate reflected a thin line of light. Ryan noticed it because sometimes the mind saves small details when the heart is trying not to break in public. "Are you asking me to forgive you before it happens?" he asked. "Or just asking me to stay quiet after?" Claire flinched, not because the question was unfair, but because it was too accurate. "That is not what I mean." "Then what do you mean?" She took a breath, and when she spoke again, her voice had that careful softness people use when they are trying to make cruelty sound thoughtful. "I mean, I love you. I do. But Grant was the man I always wondered about. Everyone has a what if. I just do not want to spend the rest of my life wondering if I made the safe choice, because I was afraid." Ryan looked at the woman he had sat beside through hospital waiting rooms, late bills, job losses, failed dreams, and quiet mornings when love was not glamorous but still real. Safe choice. That was what 10 years had become in her mouth. Not husband, not partner, not the man who had carried the weight when life got heavy. Safe. The kind of word people used when they wanted to make loyalty sound like a lack of imagination. "And after this one night," he said, "you think you come home and become my wife again?" Claire's eyes filled, but not enough to stop her. "I think if you really love me, you will understand that this is something I need to close." Ryan sat back slowly. The pasta was cooling now, the sauce thickening at the edges. He could smell garlic, rain, and the faint citrus candle Claire had lit before dinner, as if the right setting might make the wrong request easier to hear. A younger version of him might have pleaded. He might have asked why he was not enough. He might have cursed Grant, or begged Claire to remember what they had built. But the man sitting at that table understood something with sudden, painful clarity. She did not want permission because she respected him. She wanted permission so she would not have to call betrayal by its real name. Ryan placed his napkin beside the plate and stood. Claire looked startled. "Where are you going?" "To think," he said. "Ryan, please do not make this into something ugly." He paused at the kitchen doorway and turned back. "Claire, you already did." Then he walked into the small home office at the end of the hall. Behind him, the house stayed quiet. No chair scraped. No footsteps followed. On his desk, his phone screen lit up with an old message from Marcus Reed about a lawyer he once recommended during a separation. Ryan stared at it for a long time. Then he opened a blank folder on his computer and gave it a name he never thought he would need. Records. Long before Claire used the word closure to make betrayal sound almost reasonable, she had loved Ryan Mitchell because he was the one man who never made love feel like a test. They met 10 years earlier at a mutual friend's backyard cookout outside Nashville. On one of those humid Tennessee evenings when the air smelled like charcoal, cut grass, and rain waiting behind the clouds. Claire had arrived late, flustered from a bad day at the design firm where she worked, carrying a tray of cupcakes she had dropped twice in the car. Ryan was the only person who did not laugh when the frosting slid sideways. He found a clean plate, helped her fix them with a butter knife, and said, "Nobody will know unless you confess." She laughed then, really laughed, with relief in her whole face. That was how he entered her life. Not like fireworks. Like a door opening after a long day. Grant Holloway had been the firework before him. The college musician with the easy smile and impossible promises. The man who made every moment feel exciting because nothing about him was dependable. Ryan was different. He called when he said he would. He listened without turning the conversation back to himself. He did not vanish for 3 days and return with poetry about being misunderstood. When Claire's car broke down on Interstate 24 during a thunderstorm, Ryan drove 40 minutes to sit with her until the tow truck came. When she lost her job 2 years into their marriage, he paid the mortgage without making her feel like a burden. When she tried to open her small design studio and panicked over permits, shelving, invoices, and insurance forms, Ryan spent weekends painting walls, assembling desks, and learning enough about her business to help without taking credit. Claire used to stand in that little studio with paint on her jeans and say, "You make life feel possible." Ryan believed her because he wanted to. Their home was not glamorous, but it was steady. A brick ranch house on a quiet street. A porch light that Ryan fixed twice before replacing the wiring. A kitchen table they bought used and sanded by hand. Framed prints Claire chose because she said blank walls made a house feel temporary. They had routines. Friday pasta. Sunday grocery trips. Coffee on the back steps when the weather was mild enough. Some people would have called it ordinary, but Ryan thought ordinary was where love proved itself. Anyone could chase a spark. It took something deeper to stay warm after the spark became a hearth. For years, Claire seemed to understand that. She would rest her head against his shoulder after long client meetings and whisper that she was grateful she did not have to perform with him. She said he was home. But gratitude can fade quietly when a person starts comparing peace to excitement. It began with small comments. A sigh when Ryan suggested their usual restaurant. A complaint that every weekend looked the same. A joke about how he planned everything like a weather report. Ryan tried to adjust. He booked a cabin in Gatlinburg, surprised her with concert tickets, rearranged his work schedule to spend more time with her. Claire thanked him, but the thanks felt polite, not alive. Something in her had turned toward a door he could not see. By the time Grant's name returned to their conversations, Ryan already felt the shift, though he did not know what to call it. Claire began talking about old dreams, old versions of herself, old roads she had never taken. She said people could love the life they built and still wonder who they might have been. Ryan wanted to answer that everyone wonders. He wanted to say wondering does not give a person the right to burn what someone else has kept standing. But he kept trying to understand instead. That was his mistake, or maybe just his nature. He had spent 10 years believing that if he loved Claire steadily enough, she would never confuse stability with a cage. Sitting in the kitchen after she asked for one night with Grant, Ryan finally saw the truth in reverse. She had not stopped valuing him because he failed to be enough. She had stopped valuing him because he had made being loved safely feel too easy. Grant Holloway came back into Claire's life the way old regret always does, dressed better than the truth. It started with a photo online from a private music event in Nashville, posted by someone Claire still followed from college. Grant stood under blue stage lights with a guitar strap across his shoulder, older now, sharper in the face, wearing the kind of confidence that made people assume every mistake in his past had turned into wisdom. Claire showed Ryan the photo one evening while they were sitting on the couch, and she tried to sound casual. "You remember Grant, right?" Ryan looked at the screen long enough to see the smile, the guitar, the caption about second chances and old songs. "I remember the name," he said. Claire laughed softly, but something in it was too careful. "He looks different." Ryan wanted to say that everyone looks different after 10 years when you only see the picture they choose to post. Instead, he nodded and let the moment pass. At first, Grant existed only in small mentions. He had moved back for a residency at a downtown venue. He was writing again. He had been through a lot. He had finally grown up. Claire repeated those details the way people repeat a story they want to believe before anyone questions it. Then came the messages. Not hidden at first, because hidden things often begin in plain sight. A comment under a post. A memory about a college bar that no longer existed. A joke about the night Claire and Grant drove to Memphis for a concert and got lost on the way home. Ryan tried to trust the harmless version of it. He had never wanted to be the husband who policed a woman's past. But the past became present one notification at a time. Claire started taking her phone into the bathroom. She began smiling at the screen during breakfast, then turning it face down when Ryan entered the room. She played Grant's old music while rearranging the studio, saying it helped her reconnect with herself. Reconnect. That was the word she used before closure. It sounded gentle, almost healthy, but Ryan could feel the sharp edge beneath it. Grant knew exactly what to say. He did not ask Claire to leave Ryan. He did something more dangerous. He asked whether she ever wondered who she might have become if she had not chosen the responsible life. He told her she had always been too alive for safe rooms. He said some people were meant to be remembered, and some were meant to be returned to. Claire carried those sentences around like matches in her pocket. She began talking about energy, unfinished chapters, and the kind of connection that never really dies. Ryan listened from across dinner tables and bedroom doorways, feeling himself slowly being recast in a play he had not agreed to join. He was no longer the man who helped her survive. He was the man who represented everything predictable enough to escape. One night, after a small argument about her late messages, Claire said, "Grant sees a part of me I forgot existed." Ryan stood at the sink, rinsing a coffee mug that was already clean. "And what part do I see?" She hesitated, and that hesitation told him more than the answer. "You see the part that pays bills and keeps things going." The mug slipped slightly in his wet hands, but he caught it before it hit the sink. 10 years of loyalty reduced to maintenance. That was how Grant's return changed the air in their home. He did not need to be present to take space. His name sat between them at dinner. His music-filled rooms Ryan had painted. His questions turned Claire's boredom into a kind of grievance. And Claire, hungry to feel chosen by the man who once left her behind, began mistaking his attention for destiny. Ryan could see it happening, but seeing a train move toward a bridge does not mean you can always stop it. He suggested counseling. She called it pressure. He suggested they take a trip together. She called it panic. He asked if Grant respected their marriage. She said Ryan was making her feel trapped. That was when he understood the cruel architecture of it. Grant had returned not as a man, but as an excuse. An excuse for Claire to treat longing as courage, regret as love, and Ryan's pain as the price of her self-discovery. By the time she sat across from him in their Nashville kitchen and asked for one night, the betrayal had already been built. She was only asking him to bless the final brick. Claire did not call it cheating. That was what made the conversation feel colder than if she had simply confessed desire and shame. She called it closure, healing, a final answer to a question that had lived too long in the back of her mind. After Ryan walked into the home office, she followed him only as far as the hallway, standing beneath the framed print they bought on their 5th anniversary in Chattanooga. "You are making this sound like something dirty," she said. Ryan turned at the office door and looked at her. "I am not the one trying to rename it." Claire folded her arms across her cream sweater, the same careful posture she used when clients challenged her designs. "I am being honest with you. Most people would hide this. Most people would not ask their husband to approve it." She looked wounded by that, as if his refusal to admire her honesty was somehow unfair. "I am not asking you to approve anything. I am asking you to understand that Grant was part of my life before you. I never got to know what it meant. I never got to choose him as an adult." Ryan felt the sentence settle between them. Choose him as an adult. Not see him. Not talk to him. Choose him. "And you think marriage gives you a pause button?" he asked. Claire exhaled through her nose, frustrated now. "That is exactly what I mean. You turn everything into rules. I am talking about one night, Ryan. One. I come home after. I stay. We move forward. Maybe better than before." The hallway light hummed softly above them. Down the hall, the pasta still sat cooling on the table, a dinner prepared for a husband and wife who no longer seemed to be standing in the same marriage. Ryan thought about the word better. She wanted to break trust and call the aftermath healing. She wanted to leave and call returning loyalty. She wanted him to be modern enough to suffer quietly and loving enough to call that suffering maturity. "You keep saying you come home," he said. "Like that is the gift." Claire's eyes sharpened. Because it is. I am not leaving you. Ryan gave a slow nod, not in agreement, but because the truth had become almost painfully clear. No, you are asking me to stay available while you leave me for a night. Her mouth opened, then closed. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. The rain tapped the kitchen window in the distance. Somewhere outside, a car passed along the wet street, tires whispering over asphalt. Claire stepped closer, softening her voice. If you loved me the way you say you do, you would not want me to carry this forever. Ryan looked at the woman he had once held through panic attacks and career failures, the woman he had believed would never use his love as a tool against him. If you loved me the way you promised, he said, you would not ask me to carry it for you. That was the first moment Claire looked afraid. Not afraid of losing him, not yet, but afraid that the language she had built around her decision was not working. She reached for his hand. He let her touch him, but he did not close his fingers around hers. Ryan, please, do not make me feel like a terrible person for needing an answer. He looked down at her hand on his. 10 years of memory lived in that touch. Wedding vows, mortgage papers, studio keys, hospital chairs, grocery lists, quiet mornings. Everything ordinary and sacred that Grant had never had to earn. You already have your answer, Ryan said. You just do not like what it says about you. Claire pulled her hand back as if he had finally crossed a line she had drawn for herself. So that is it. I am honest, and you punish me. Ryan almost laughed, but there was no humor left in him. No, you are planning to betray me and asking for applause because you announced it first. The sentence ended the conversation. Claire turned away, wiping under one eye, though no tears had fallen yet. I cannot talk to you when you are like this, she whispered. Like what? Cold. Ryan stood in the doorway of the office, feeling the heat of anger somewhere far below the surface, buried under something heavier and cleaner. No, Claire. Cold is asking your husband to keep your place warm while you go see if another man still wants you. She did not answer. She walked back toward the kitchen, and Ryan heard the scrape of her chair, then the soft click of her phone being picked up from the table. He knew, without seeing the screen, that Grant was already part of whatever she would tell herself next. Ryan closed the office door, but not all the way. He did not want secrecy. He wanted distance. On his desk, the blank folder named Records waited beneath the glow of the monitor. He opened a new document and began typing the date, the time, and the words Claire had said as closely as he could remember them. Not because he wanted to destroy her, not because he knew exactly what came next, but because a man can only be told his dignity is negotiable so many times before he starts writing down the proof that it was not. Ryan did not sleep that night. He did not pace dramatically through the house or stand over Claire demanding that she choose before sunrise. He did something quieter, and because it was quieter, it frightened even him. He gathered facts. In the home office, with rain still tapping the window and the pasta dishes untouched in the kitchen, he opened the records folder and began saving everything that showed the shape of what Claire had tried to soften with pretty words. Screenshots of messages she had sent about Grant. Calendar entries for the private event in Nashville. Credit card charges from the joint account. A new dress from a boutique in Green Hills. A hotel deposit downtown. A dinner reservation under Claire's name. Rideshare holds that made no sense for a woman who claimed she was only seeking emotional closure. Each line on the screen looked ordinary until Ryan placed it beside the others. Then it became a map, not of one mistake, of preparation. Around midnight, his phone buzzed. Marcus Reed, his oldest friend from a construction management program years back, had replied to Ryan's earlier message with one name, Evelyn Carter. Family law. Direct, calm, worth every dollar. Ryan stared at the recommendation longer than he needed to. Calling a lawyer felt like stepping into a life where the word wife no longer meant safety. But Claire had already stepped somewhere else and asked him to hold the door open. Ryan sent Evelyn's office an email with a short explanation and attached the first files. He kept the language clean. No insults. No accusations he could not support. Just dates, expenses, messages, and the sentence Claire had said at the kitchen table. At 2 a.m, Claire appeared in the doorway wearing a robe and the expression of someone annoyed that the person she hurt was still awake because of it. Are you really documenting me now? She asked. Ryan did not turn from the computer. I am documenting what happened. You are making this feel legal. He finally looked at her. The hallway light behind her made her look softer than her words. You made it marital. Claire folded her arms. It is one night. Then why did it need a hotel deposit from our joint account? The question landed between them. Her face changed by a fraction, just enough to tell him she had not expected him to see that yet. I was going to explain. You had all dinner. She looked away. Ryan saved the last receipt and closed the laptop. I am done arguing tonight. So what? You are punishing me with silence. He stood slowly, not to intimidate, not to perform, but because he was tired of speaking upward from a chair while she treated the room like a hearing she could win by changing the subject. No, Claire. I am giving you the space you said you needed. I am also making sure your space does not spend our money and then come back asking me to call it healing. She had no clean answer for that. The next morning, Evelyn Carter called him at 9:15. Her voice was steady, professional, and free of the pity Ryan feared would break him. She listened as he explained the dinner, Grant, the joint account charges, the way Claire framed the whole thing as closure. When he finished, Evelyn asked, "Do you want revenge or do you want protection?" Ryan looked through the office doorway toward the kitchen table, where Claire had cleared only her own plate before going to bed. "Protection," he said. "Good," Evelyn replied. "Then do not chase. Do not threaten. Keep communication in writing when possible. Preserve financial records. If she chooses to go, let her actions remain her actions, not your reaction." After the call, Ryan printed the statements and placed them in a manila folder. He removed a small velvet ring box from the top drawer of his dresser and set it on the office shelf, not because he was ready to use it, but because seeing it there reminded him that marriage was not just a feeling. It was a boundary. It was a promise. It was a line Claire had already started decorating with softer names. That evening, she moved through the house carefully, avoiding the office, avoiding his eyes, avoiding the truth sitting in paper form beneath his desk lamp. Ryan did not confront her again. He cooked nothing. He asked nothing. He simply folded a few shirts, opened the guest room closet, and made space. Because if Claire had decided one night with Grant was worth risking 10 years with him, Ryan would not stand in the doorway begging her to value what she had already priced. Claire left the house just after 7 on Saturday evening, wearing the dark blue dress Ryan had seen on the credit card statement before he saw it on her. She came down the hallway slowly, as if giving him one last chance to turn the night into a scene she could blame him for. Ryan was standing in the living room near the window, watching the rain turn the streetlights into long gold streaks across the pavement. The house smelled like cedar from the candle Claire had lit earlier, a strange gesture of softness before doing something that would harden everything between them. She stopped near the entry table and touched the strap of her purse. "I hope you can be mature about this," she said. Ryan turned from the window. That sentence did what anger had not been able to do. It separated the last thread of confusion from the truth. She was not leaving with shame. She was leaving with a vocabulary prepared to protect herself from responsibility. Mature meant quiet. Understanding meant obedient. Love meant waiting at home while she crossed a line and expected the floor to still be there when she returned. Ryan looked at her dress, her careful makeup, the small overnight bag by the door she had tried to call unnecessary, but packed anyway. "Drive safely," he said. Claire blinked, thrown off by the absence of protest. "That is all. That is all." Her face tightened. Maybe she had wanted one final argument, one final proof that he was controlling, insecure, old-fashioned, whatever word would make her feel brave instead of selfish. But Ryan gave her nothing to use. She picked up the bag. "I will be back tomorrow morning." He nodded once. "I know." She opened the front door, and the sound of rain filled the house for a moment. Then the door closed, and the silence that followed did not feel empty. It felt like a line had been crossed and the witness had stayed behind. Ryan stood in place until her car pulled away, red taillights disappearing down the wet Nashville street. Only then did he move. He walked to the bedroom, opened the top drawer, and took out the velvet ring box. His wedding band came off slowly, not because the metal resisted, but because 10 years of habit did. The skin beneath it looked pale, marked by the shape of something that had once meant forever. He placed the ring inside the box and closed the lid with a soft click that sounded louder than it should have. Then he gathered what he had already folded: work shirts, jeans, toiletries, the old sweatshirt Claire used to steal on cold mornings. He carried everything to the guest room, one armful at a time, without rushing. The act was not dramatic. That made it worse. No broken frames. No slammed drawers. Just a man removing himself from the place where he had been expected to wait. Around 8:30, his phone lit up. "Claire, please do not sit around spiraling. This is something I need." Ryan read it once, saved it, and sent it to the records folder. At 9:15, another message arrived. "I will come home. You know that, right?" He stared at the words for a long time. She still thought returning was the same as staying faithful. She still believed the house, the marriage, and the man inside it would remain exactly where she left them. Ryan did not answer. He opened his laptop, attached the new screenshots to an email for Evelyn Carter, and wrote a brief note. "She left tonight. These are her messages. Joint account charges are in the folder I sent earlier." After sending it, he walked back to the kitchen. The pasta from 2 nights before was gone now, the dishes washed, the table clear. On the counter sat the manila folder, the ring box, and a blank legal pad where he had written only 3 words. "I choose myself." He did not write them as a slogan. He wrote them because someone had to say it in that house, and Claire had spent the week using the same idea to excuse her betrayal. Near midnight, Ryan turned off every light except the lamp in the guest room. He lay on the unfamiliar bed and listened to the rain soften against the roof. Somewhere downtown, Claire was with the man she had called a dream. But in the quiet of that small room, Ryan understood that she was not the only one making a choice. She had chosen Grant for one night. Ryan had chosen not to be the man waiting by the door when the dream was over. Claire came home at 8:46 the next morning, carrying the overnight bag like it weighed more than when she left. Ryan heard her key turn in the lock from the guest room, where he had already showered, dressed, and placed a clean stack of documents beside his laptop. The house was quiet in a way Claire did not expect. No television on low volume. No coffee waiting in the kitchen the way he usually made it on Sunday mornings. No husband standing by the sink with tired eyes, ready to ask the questions she had spent the drive home preparing to answer. She stepped into the hallway and paused. "Ryan." Her voice was careful, almost gentle, as if gentleness could soften the shape of what she had done. Ryan walked out of the guest room, not the bedroom they had shared for 10 years, and that was the first thing she noticed. Her eyes moved past him, into the room behind him, where his folded shirt sat on the chair and his shoes were lined against the wall. "Why are your things in there?" she asked. Ryan did not answer immediately. He walked to the kitchen table, where a white envelope from Evelyn Carter's office waited beside the manila folder and the closed velvet ring box. Claire followed slowly, her face changing as she recognized the kind of envelope people do not ignore. "What is this?" "Separation paperwork," Ryan said. "A request to review joint account spending, temporary financial safeguards, and communication boundaries going forward." Claire stared at him as if he had suddenly spoken another language. "You called a lawyer?" "Yes." "Because of one night." The words came out too quickly, too rehearsed, and Ryan understood she had built the entire drive home around that phrase. One night. Small. Contained. Forgivable because it was over. He rested one hand on the back of a chair, steadying himself against the strange calm that had arrived after the worst of the pain. "No," he said, "because you asked me to approve it before you did it." Claire's lips parted. She looked toward the envelope again, then at the ring box. Something in her face faltered. "Ryan, I came home. I know. I told you I would. You did." His agreement seemed to confuse her more than anger would have. She set her bag down beside the table. "Then why are you acting like I left you?" Ryan looked at the bag, then at the woman who still believed return was the same as repair. "Because you did. You just thought the door would stay open." Claire's eyes filled, but this time the tears looked less like regret and more like fear of consequences arriving too soon. She reached for the envelope, opened it, and scanned the first page. The legal words stripped the softness from her story. Review of marital funds. Written communication. Preservation of records. Charges connected to Grant Holloway. The name looked different in print. Less romantic. Less unfinished. More like evidence. "You put his name in this?" she whispered. "Your choices put his name in it." She shook her head. "This is cruel." Ryan almost looked away, but he made himself stay present. For 10 years, he had softened hard moments for her. He had explained bills gently, handled repairs quietly, absorbed stress so she could keep building her life without feeling the weight of every beam holding it up. He was done making reality easier for the person who had made humiliation sound like maturity. Cruel was asking your husband to keep his place while you tested whether another man still mattered, he said. Claire pressed the page to her chest like it might protect her from the rest. I was confused. You were prepared. That sentence landed harder than anything else he had said. She glanced toward the kitchen sink, toward the table, toward the hallway leading to the bedroom, looking for the home she had expected to find unchanged. But Ryan's side of the house had already shifted. His ring was no longer on his hand. His clothes were no longer in their room. His silence was no longer waiting. You cannot end 10 years over one night, Claire said, her voice breaking. Ryan picked up the ring box and held it for a moment before placing it beside the envelope. You ended 10 years when you asked me to agree that my dignity was optional. Claire sat down slowly, the papers trembling in her hands. The dream she had left to chase had followed her home only as a name in a legal folder. And the man she thought would be waiting at the door was standing in front of her now, calm, hurt, and no longer available for her to choose last. Claire stayed at the kitchen table long after Ryan walked back to the guest room. The legal envelope lay open in front of her, and Grant Holloway's name sat on the page with a plainness that made it feel smaller than the fantasy she had built around him. Last night, Grant had looked like unfinished music, old electricity, a doorway back to the woman she imagined she had lost. In the morning light, his name looked like a problem. She picked up her phone with trembling fingers and called him from the back porch, where the air was cool and the neighborhood was waking up with lawn sprinklers, distant traffic, and the quiet clatter of ordinary families starting Sunday. Grant answered on the fourth ring, his voice warm at first, almost sleepy. Hey, you made it home. Claire closed her eyes. Ryan called a lawyer. The warmth disappeared so quickly she could hear the space it left behind. What do you mean? There are papers. My name, your name, the hotel charge, the joint account, everything. Grant was silent for a moment too long. Claire, I told you this needed to be handled carefully. She gripped the porch railing. You told me I deserved closure. I said you deserved to understand your feelings, he answered, already editing himself. That is not the same as me getting involved in your marriage. The sentence was so controlled, so self-protective, that Claire almost did not recognize the man who had spoken under soft downtown lights the night before. She had expected reassurance. She had expected him to say Ryan was overreacting, that what they felt mattered, that the night meant something large enough to survive consequences. Instead, she heard a man stepping backward without moving his feet. Grant, you knew what this was, she said. I knew we had history, he replied. I knew there were unresolved feelings. But I never told you to blow up your life. Blow up your life. The phrase landed with a dull finality. Suddenly Claire saw the difference between Ryan and Grant with a clarity that made her feel cold. Ryan had carried consequences for 10 years without making a speech about it. Grant could not carry one morning of them. Ryan had paid bills, fixed rooms, sat through panic and failure, and built a life so steady she had mistaken it for something small. Grant had offered a night wrapped in nostalgia, then retreated the moment that nostalgia had paperwork attached. So what was I to you? She asked. Grant sighed, not cruelly, but with the impatience of a man who did not want a beautiful memory turned into responsibility. Claire, do not do that. We are adults. You made your own decision. There it was. The final correction to the dream. Not destiny. Not love returned. Not the missing chapter. A decision she made alone, now inconvenient to the man who helped make it feel romantic. Claire ended the call without saying goodbye. She stood on the porch until her hands hurt from gripping the rail, listening to the world continue as if nothing sacred had been broken. When she went back inside, Ryan was in the hallway carrying a small stack of folded clothes from the bedroom to the guest room. He did not look at her phone. He did not ask what Grant said. That made it worse, because it meant he already knew. He says this is between us, Claire said, hating how weak the words sounded. Ryan paused with the clothes in his arms. He is right about one thing. Her face tightened. You do not have to be cruel. I am not being cruel. I am agreeing that this marriage was not his to break unless you handed him the key. Claire looked down. The house felt different now, not because the furniture had moved, but because the meaning had. The kitchen table was no longer where they shared Friday pasta. It was where she asked him to accept humiliation as maturity. The hallway was no longer where she kissed him goodbye before work. It was where he carried his life out of their room, one folded shirt at a time. I thought I needed to know, she whispered. Ryan adjusted the clothes in his arms, his face calm but tired. And now you do. She wanted to ask if that knowledge could be traded back, if regret could undo the hotel receipt, the messages, the dress, the sentence that told him his dignity was optional. But regret does not erase preparation. Regret only arrives after the damage finally has a name. Ryan walked into the guest room and placed the clothes on the chair. Claire stood in the hallway, suddenly understanding that Grant had not destroyed her marriage by being irresistible. She had destroyed it by believing Ryan would always remain available after being disrespected. The man she called a dream had become a voice on a phone protecting himself. The man she called safe had become the one person strong enough to walk away clean. The meeting at Evelyn Carter's office happened 2 days later, in a quiet building just outside downtown Nashville, where the windows faced a row of winter trees and the conference table was polished enough to reflect every document placed on it. Claire sat across from Ryan with her hands folded tightly, looking smaller than she had at the kitchen table when she first said Grant's name, like it was a door she needed to open. Evelyn did not raise her voice. She did not need to. She laid out the timeline with clean, professional precision. The messages, the dinner conversation, the hotel deposit, the dress, the joint account charges, the late-night texts, the name Grant Holloway printed in the records not as a dream, but as a fact. Claire tried once to soften it. It was one night, she said, but the words sounded weaker in that room, surrounded by paper. Ryan looked at her for a long moment. No, he said quietly. It was the night you asked me to agree that my dignity was optional. Claire's eyes filled, and this time he believed the tears were real. But real tears do not rewind a choice. They only prove the consequence finally arrived. I thought if I got closure, I could come back better, she whispered. Ryan nodded, not because he agreed, but because he finally understood the shape of her mistake. You did not want closure. You wanted permission to compare a life that loved you with a fantasy that never had to carry you. Evelyn remained silent, letting the sentence stand. Outside the office window, traffic moved slowly through the cold afternoon, ordinary lives passing by, while one marriage reached the point where honesty no longer needed to shout. Claire wiped her cheek. Do you still love me? She asked. Ryan looked down at his left hand, at the pale circle where his wedding band had been, then back at the woman who had once called him home. I love who I thought we were, he said. But I cannot stay married to someone who needed to see how low I would kneel before calling it love. That was when Claire truly broke, not loudly, not dramatically, but in the quiet way a person breaks when the last excuse falls away. Grant had not chosen her future. He had protected his own. Ryan had not destroyed her. He had simply stopped protecting her from the truth of what she had done. Evelyn reviewed the next steps: written communication, account review, temporary living arrangements, and formal separation terms. Every phrase sounded calm, almost boring, and that made it more final. Claire had imagined betrayal would be a storm, something passionate enough to justify itself. Instead, the aftermath was paperwork, receipts, quiet signatures, and a husband who no longer fought for a place beside someone who had already placed him beneath another man's memory. When the meeting ended, Claire followed Ryan into the hallway. Please, she said, her voice thin. Do not let one mistake erase 10 years. Ryan stopped near the elevator. One mistake is forgetting an anniversary. One mistake is saying the wrong thing in an argument. You planned this, paid for it with our money, asked me to approve it, then came home expecting me to still be standing where you left me. Claire looked at the floor. Ryan's voice softened, but not enough to become a door. You came home, Claire, but I was no longer waiting there. Then he walked out into the cold Nashville afternoon with the folder under his arm, not victorious, not cruel, only free in the painful way a man becomes free when he finally stops negotiating with disrespect. What do you think hurt Claire more, losing Ryan, or realizing Grant was never the dream she believed he was? Share your thoughts, because stories like this remind us that loyalty should never be treated like a backup plan, and love without respect eventually becomes a place no one can survive. If you believe quiet strength, dignity, and hard truth deserve to be heard, make sure you subscribe so you do not miss the next story.